Hello, I'm Dan. This is Vinyl Fury, another video of new additions to my vinyl record collection. So today there are several recent reissues of, to me, classic albums, starting with something that is on vinyl for the first time in its whole 25 plus years of existence. Days of the New, self-titled, from 1997. All of the albums that they've put out have been self-titled, and they're just referred to by their color of the cover. So some people call this orange. I think it's more yellow, but it's the debut. These guys were like 17 when they did this, kind of a Silverchair situation. Hint, hint. It's acoustic rock that is very well done and impressive for their youth. Really well constructed songs. The playing is fantastic, very catchy, and for all acoustic guitars, it rocks, really. This could have been pressed on vinyl at any time in at least the last 10 years, and it would have been an easy sell, I think. People have wanted this for a long time, as evident by the fact that this, I think, was initially reissued in January, immediately became hard to find. I didn't get it until a second shipment last month in March sometime. It became available again. And to start with, even straight from Music on Vinyl, the cheapest I've seen it is like $42. I got it through Pop Market, and there was a 10% off offer. And I think it was still around $40, which is a lot. It's a double LP, it's a single jacket. That's how Music on Vinyl usually does it. But Music on Vinyl also usually does very good pressings. Their pressing quality is always fantastic. Sourcing is most of the time a question. What did they use? Typically it's digital. And I think that's the case here. But I'm pretty sure it would have been either recorded or mixed to tape. It definitely sounds like there's tape in there. It has a nice warm analog sound to the production. So, it's not leaps and bounds better than playing it on a CD. I've heard it on CD for years. I also have it on tape. But it was good. It's quite good. And I've been waiting to see this for a long time. And at first, I wasn't sure that I was going to pay up for it, but especially when it was sold out pretty quick on the first round, I knew I'd regret it if I didn't at least try it and see how good it was. I do recommend it if you can find it. I think it's a little bit easier to find now. So don't be spending, $80, $100 for it. But eventually, it will be that. So I wouldn't mind seeing the other two albums on vinyl. I'd probably buy them. They weren't as successful, but I think technically they only got better. Especially that third album, which is the red one. Really good. And it's just so unfortunate that, Travis Meeks, the singer, kind of broke with the band after the touring cycle of this first album and kind of carried on Days of the New by himself. And I think the rest of them all of them were involved in Tantric after that. He was the subject of an Intervention episode, that TV show. I think that was back in like 2007, something like that. Been on drugs, and he's been off and on, it seems, ever since. There's some really rough-looking mugshots of him from like 2-3 years ago. I mean, he is barely recognizable. He's really aged up, worn down, and it sucks. I've heard every once in a while there'll be a little bit of information that rises up. It seems like he's been to rehab again, trying to get his shit together, trying to get his equipment back. I really hope the best for him. It's really too bad that he got so taken over, because he's really talented. And I would have loved to have heard what he could have done had he not been, sidelined, taken over by substance abuse. So another band that showed up on the scene very young, but had a lot more staying power, and has been huge in my life, and I've talked about that a lot. This is Silverchair. This is another music on vinyl reissue. I recently got Frog Stomp and Freak Show reissues from them, and this came out in March. It's from the Silverchair collection, which I think you can read on the label there, the sticker. This one actually is a gatefold, and a nice one at that. And it has the same kind of matte textured, shiny, really cool finish on the jacket that the other two have. It's pressing of 3000. This is numbered 1057. This one is on a gold vinyl. And I didn't mention that the Days of the New is just black. Kind of a missed opportunity not to put that on something like a yellowish, goldish vinyl, at least for the first pressing. They usually do that. But anyway, this is a reissue from Music on Vinyl. They've pressed it at least twice before, I think. And it's actually one of the first Music on Vinyl pressings that I ever got, back in like 2010, 11. And I wasn't impressed. It was also a gatefold, and just like this, the front has a pocket, but it's just like glued shut. Didn't really need to be a gatefold, but the sound of that back then, I wasn't impressed by it. And so I didn't have super high hopes for this, but the Freak Show reissue was also a single disc, and it actually sounded pretty good. And thankfully, this actually does sound pretty great. You know, I have another double LP version of this from Shop Radiocast, and that is probably better overall. But for being on one disc, I thought it sounded good. I enjoyed listening to it. I've listened to this album many, many times. This was huge for me when I was in high school. So I try not to do the multiple copy thing anymore, but when it comes to stuff like this, sometimes you just gotta go for it. So this is something fairly unique. I don't think I've ever seen it before. This is David Cross, the comedian. The album is called Bigger and Blacker, which is a joke on the Chris Rock album. And this has a velvet wrap to it. You can actually take it off. It covers the jacket, which is actually a kind of stout and thick cardboard jacket, which is nice, with the original cover there. And I've had this on CD, and there's a DVD of it as well, which is usually the way I listen to it, as the gatefold. And I remember seeing this when it came out years ago. I think this came out in 2010. And it was only, $25, but I thought, a comedy album on vinyl, even though I love it, it just doesn't seem like it's worth it. And it stuck around in record stores for several years, and I would see it, and I thought, man, that looks really cool. I guess I don't really need to have it. And there's only 2,500 of them. At least that's what the sticker says on it. And for some reason, just while I've been on this buying kick lately, picking up new releases again. Actually, I saw David Cross perform just last month for the, what was that, the fourth time? It was fantastic. So I looked this up, and a website, I think it was Stand Up Records, still had copies available. It was released on Sub Pop. Here's the standard Sub Pop inner sleeve. And so I got it, and it was still like $30. And it's pretty long to put on one LP, and I can hear, it's pretty compressed, but it's all vocals and stuff, so it's a little easier to get away with that. Listening to stand-up on vinyl is actually pretty enjoyable, but gotta admit, that is a pretty cool presentation there. So Quicksand is a pretty influential band in the post-hardcore genre. Their debut album, Slip, just turned 30 years old and saw a reissue for the first time in a while, and they had it remastered from the original tape, which is very cool. And I've had this before. Again, Shop Radiocast did a pressing of it years ago. It was about 10 years ago. And I enjoyed it. It was great, but it got pretty valuable. And I sold it not all that long ago. And just kind of on the assumption that at some point there would be another reissue. And here it is. And it's a pretty big reissue. There's several colors available, all in like 1,000 or 2,000. There's exclusives for all different kinds of places. Bull Moose, I think, Newberry Comics, different distributors. This one is an evergreen, is what they call it. And that came from Death Wish. Now the music sounds great. It's probably the best I've ever heard it. It was nice and punchy and warm, energetic. I enjoyed it. One side is pressed off center, and that is one of the most infuriating things about vinyl records, especially modern pressings. It is an unacceptably common issue. There's always been warps, but it really seems like the off-center pressings I've found them more in the modern era. And it's really disappointing because this is a $30 record and that experience is just diminished because it's got that, just watching that tone arm move back and forth is, it sucks. And there are, at some points, I can hear it. Not all the time. But yeah, it's pretty damn disappointing. So, who knows if it's only on this edition of it. I have no idea, but that was my experience. So it was great, and then it was kind of a bummer. So that was another reminder and kind of slap back into reality. Like, I need to cool it on the new vinyl because it's expensive and it's often just disappointing. I don't need to put myself through that, especially at that expense. One that worked out better was Botch, We Are the Romans. Another reissue. This had been not available for a while, which is why the previous pressing that I had crept up in value. Again, sold it. Really wasn't a sonic advantage over the CD. I downloaded from Bandcamp the waves of the remaster and felt that was good enough. And again, figured, there's probably going to be another reissue at some point. So within the last 6 months, and I think this is a new master of it, it's got the new song that they recorded last year called 122. I really doubted that they were going to put out new music ever again, even though some people seemed to think that was going to be coming, and it actually did. Pretty cool song. It's not as bombastic and heavy as the rest of this album is. This is, if you've never heard Botch, screaming, mathy, hardcore, fairly unique sound from Botch. And the guitarist from Botch went on to do Minus the Bear for years after that and was much more successful with that. But over time, Botch has become more and more recognized. So much so that there was a new song, new reissue of this album, and even more unbelievably, something that they said would never happen. They're going on tour. They've already played several shows, and I will be seeing them in October. They put 3 shows on sale for Portland for some reason. I was kind of surprised, but at least 2 of them are sold out. So I saw Botch on their last tour. I had never heard of them. A friend of mine had a band that was opening, so I went to see them. And then Botch legitimately blew my mind. It was very impressive. I don't think I'd heard anything like it before. Not knowing what I was getting into, that was pretty eye-opening when I think it was like 18. So to be able to see them again all this time later, that is pretty cool. Me and my friends are very excited. So yeah, this is a double LP. This one's just black. It also has a couple color variations. I didn't feel the need to go with that. I got it as cheap as I could. And it sounds pretty good, actually. So lastly, I really love the Mercury program, an instrumental kind of post-rock band. And the drummer has had his own project off and on again, and it's called Textual. And this is Dirty South Still Life from 2005. And it's like electronic, glitchy, home recording, computer programming, stuff like that. But it's pretty great. And this is the only album that I could find that had been released on vinyl. He's put out a few and some EPs and stuff like that. I learned of Textual at the same time that I learned of like Profuse 73 and Telephone Tel Aviv. And so in my mind, a very similar type of music. But I found this on Discogs. It was really cheap. I think it was like $8 or $9 new. It was listed as mint condition, and it came with a sealed CD. All for $9. So I snatched that up. It actually sounded pretty good on vinyl. It was cool that it came with the CD. And that was a great find. Okay, so there we go. I have caught up with all of the records that I have listened to and made notes for over the last few months. Still a bunch of stuff in the inbox. But I'm thinking what would help me stay involved with this and not get behind would be to, instead of just showing the new stuff that's come in that I listened to, and maybe I've been listening to a bunch of stuff over the last 6 weeks and I got to remember all the details and what I thought about it and stuff like that. I think it makes more sense to just kind of, if I listen to something, whether it's a new edition or something from my collection, set it aside, and once I have like 5 of them lined up, then I'll make a video and just kind of do a recent spins, what I've been listening to, whether it be a new edition that I've never heard before, which is a lot of stuff that I've picked up recently, or something from my collection that I hadn't listened to in a long time. Maybe recollect how I found it, why I know it, what I think of it now. Am I going to keep it? That's an important question going forward. Is I'm trying to go through the collection again and kind of re-evaluate pretty much everything. When was the last time I listened to this? Is it still worth keeping? What's the condition of it? Stuff like that. So I think it would help me to not have to be concerned with listening to the stuff from the inbox and then collecting all that to make a video at some point and just kind of put it all together. Kind of like Big Star 1000. He does his recent spins videos where he just goes through all the stuff that he's been playing, no matter where it came from. And so I kind of got the inclination to do that from him. So I believe Fred calls that revolutions. So if you don't know Big Star 1000, I'll definitely leave a link to check him out. He listens to all kinds of stuff and has a lot of insight into it. He's been around in the vinyl community a long time. So yeah, shout out to Fred, Big Star 1000. And that'll do it for me. I think my camera is just about to shut off. So until next time, thanks for watching. Take care. Enjoy your music.